I'm Danica from the Saskatoon Public Library, and this is a special story time for grown-ups. This is Stories for Sleepless Nights. I'm really happy that I live here on Treaty 6 territory. It's a place where people have gathered to listen and tell stories for tens of thousands of years. So Stories for Sleepless Nights. It calls to mind all kinds of images, and lots of things keep me up at night. I remember when I was young and I was first dating, and boys would spend more time driving up and down 2nd Avenue in PA than they would on buying dinner or flowers. And I remember one night going out in a half-ton with a couple of friends, and there were 2 girls and 2 boys, 2 young couples. We drove up and down 2nd Avenue a couple of times and then out into the country. Now they had a plan. They wanted to stop at a little church, and they pulled the old, oops, the truck won't start again. And it was creepy. We couldn't go into the building, but even walking around the little churchyard and the graves, it was a place that I didn't want to spend very much time, because it reminded me of a story that I'd heard. And this story goes back a long time. And if you've heard many urban legends or stories, you always know that it's a friend of a friend, or a cousin of a cousin, or maybe it's an aunt's neighbor. Now, when I grew up in PA, there was a place just north of town called Little Red. And at Little Red, there was a bridge, and the bridge was called Hans Bridge. And it had the name because of a very strange occurrence that happened one night. Now, this was a cousin of a very good friend, and he had taken his girl and driven out to Little Red to find a quiet little spot, and they parked on a bridge. And the car wouldn't start. And so he said, "It's okay, I'll just go out and I'll check, and I'll see what's wrong." And he opened up the hood, and she sat inside and she waited. She knew it was cold outside. And she didn't hear anything for a while. And then she started to hear scratching on the roof of the car. And she wondered what it was. And she listened. And the scratching was slow, back and forth across the car. And she got up, and she got out of the car. And there was her boyfriend hanging upside down by his feet, and his nails were brushing against the car. And there were handprints all over the roof. And that's why it's called Hans Bridge. So this is a ballad. This is The Unquiet Grave. Now, if you're looking at the child ballads, you'll find it at number 78. The wind doth blow today, my love, a few small drops of rain. I never had but one true love, and in the grave she's laid. I'll do as much for my true love as any young man may. I'll sit and mourn all at her grave for 12 months and a day. For 12 months and a day, being up the dead began to speak. Oh, who sits weeping on my grave and will not let me sleep? 'Tis I, my love, sits on your grave, and will you not let you sleep? I crave one kiss from your cold, sweet lips, and that is all I see. You crave one kiss of my clay-cold lips, but my breath smells earthy strong. If you have one kiss of my clay-cold lips, your time will not be long. 'Tis down in yonder garden green, love, where we used to walk. The finest flower there e'er was seen is withered to the stalk. The stalk is withered dry, my dear, so will our hearts decay.
So make yourself content, my dear, till God calls you away.
So you'll notice that some of my themes tonight are love stories. And this is another one. Now, this is a story about a young woman and a young man. And they fell madly in love. Madly, madly, madly in love. Now, the young woman was beautiful, with long dark hair and big brown eyes. And she wore clothes that were the height of Victorian fashion. Beautiful colors, lovely laces and bodices and corsets. But she always wore a black ribbon around her neck. She wore it with blue, she wore it with red, she wore it with pink and yellow. With everything she wore the black ribbon. Now, she was so beautiful that a young man fell in love with her and courted her and asked her to be his bride. And she was delighted. And they spent their courtship walking in parks and just enjoying each other's company, reading poetry and eating fine food. And when it came time to their wedding day, he thought, I hope she doesn't wear that ribbon. I hope she wears white. And the black won't go with it. But on their wedding day, she walked down the aisle, beautiful in lace and satin, in beads and sequins and pearls. She was gorgeous. And as she got closer and he lifted her veil, he saw that she was still wearing that ribbon around her neck. Now, they were very proper and hadn't spent time alone in the evenings. And so that night, when they were finally alone, he asked her why she always wore the black ribbon. And she said, well, I have to wear it. It wouldn't be a good idea for me to take it off. Not a good idea at all. And he said, but it doesn't go with everything you wear. It doesn't become you with every color. And she said, well, it wouldn't be a good idea. It wouldn't be a good idea at all. And so they went through the first months and weeks of their marriage. And things were fine. And she began to learn how to take care of the home. And he loved her dearly. But he was so curious about that ribbon. And sometimes at night, he'd just touch it gently. And he'd say, why? Why, dear, do you need to wear that, even with your night clothes? And she said it wouldn't be a good idea to remove it. It wouldn't be a good idea at all. Well, one night, as she was sleeping, she looked so beautiful, absolutely stunning, with her eyes closed and her long dark hair cascading over the pillow. And he thought, she doesn't need the ribbon to be beautiful. And he reached over and he untied the bow. And when he untied the bow, her head rolled right off the bed. And her lips still moved and said, I told you, it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good idea at all. This is by Edgar Allan Poe. Lenore. Now Lenore is mentioned in The Raven. Ah, broken is the golden bowl, the spirit flown forever. Let the bell toll, a saintly soul floats on the Stygian river. And Guy de Vere, hast thou no tear? Weep now or never more. See on yon drear and rigid bier, low lies thy love, Lenore. Come, let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, an anthem for the queenliest dead that ever died so young. A dirge for her, the doubly dead, in that she died so young. Wretches, ye loved her for her wealth, and hated her for her pride, and when she fell in feeble health, ye blessed her that she died. How shall the ritual then be read, the requiem how be sung? By you, by yours, the evil eye, by yours, the slanderous tongue, that did to death the innocents that died and died so young. Persevemus, but rave not thus, and let a Sabbath song go up to God so solemnly the dead may feel no wrong. The sweet Lenore hath gone before with hope that flew beside, leaving thee wild for the dear child that should have been thy bride. For her the fair and debonair that now so lowly lies, the life upon her yellow hair, but not within her eyes. The life still there upon her hair, the death upon her eyes. O vaunt tonight my heart is light, no dirge will I appraise, but waft the angel on her flight with the paean of old days. Let no bell toll, lest her sweet soul amid its hallowed mirth should catch the note as it doth float up from the damned earth. To friends above, from fiends below, the indignant ghost is riven from hell unto a high estate, far up within the heaven. From grief and groan to a golden throne, beside the King of heaven. This is The Cremation of Sam McGee by Robert W. Service. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then our lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold, till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. It tain't being dead, it's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." A pal's last need is the thing to heed, so I swear I would not fail. And we started on the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains." Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled at their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow, and on I went, though the dogs were spent, and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake Labarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled, and the huskied howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out, and they danced about, ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peek inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked. Then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, please close the door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge. I cremated Sam McGee. This is a song called By the Glow of the Kerosene Light by Buddy West's name and the other fellas. I've heard it done by the Once, a three-piece band out of St. John's, Newfoundland, and they're amazing, and I can't wait to see them again. I remember the time when my grandpa and I would sit by the fire at night, and I'd listen to stories of how he once lived by the glow of the kerosene light. By the glow of the kerosene light. He said, Mom and Dad sent me off to school to learn how to read and to write. And they listened for hours as I read from my books by the glow of the kerosene light. By the glow of the kerosene light. Your grandma and I, we were wed at 16. Lord, she was a beautiful sight. And proudly I placed a ring on her hand by the glow of the kerosene light. By the glow of the kerosene light. About a year later, your daddy was born, and I held your grandma's hand tight. And I felt such joy as she brought forth
forth new life by the glow of the kerosene light. By the glow of the kerosene light. But having her child, it did weaken her soul. She just wasn't up for the fight. And she looked so peaceful as she went to her rest by the glow of the kerosene light. By the glow of the kerosene light. Then as now, the times they were hard. To succeed you must try all your might. 'Cause sometimes love blooms, but sometimes dreams die by the glow